let's start reading Sankya and Yoga. Okay. After we read the first para, I will explain to you the basic concepts of Sankya and Yoga traditionally, and how the Gita uses them not in the traditional manner. Okay. So we will see that. So let us start reading. Who will read today? Sunki, you will read? Yeah.
Yes, I will do.
Yeah, you can start.
In the moment of his turning from this first and summary answer to Arjuna's difficulties, and in the very first word, which strikes the keynote of a spiritual solution, the teacher makes at once a distinction which is of the utmost importance for the understanding of the Gita. The distinction of Sankhya and Yoga. Such is the intelligent knowledge of things and will, declared to thee in the Sankhya. Here now this in the Yoga. For if thou art in Yoga by this intelligence, O son of Pritha, thou shalt cast away the bondage of works. That is the literal translation of the words in which the Gita announces the distinction it intends to make.
Okay. Very small para. And he is saying now, Shreda is distinguishing, the Gita is using Sankhya and Yoga, and Shreda is going to discuss that in detail. So the Sankhya normally is it's a Jnana Yoga. Okay? It's a Jnana Yoga. It proceeds by the distinction of Purusha and Prakriti. You concentrate in the mind and make your consciousness separate from the body-mind life. It's similar to the traditional yoga, okay? The Raj Yoga, it is traditional. You separate the Purusha, you separate the soul and the body-mind life. How do you do that? By witnessing, by going on being absolutely calm and quiet and going on saying to yourself, you are not the body, you are not the mind, and you separate yourself. That's the Sankhya philosophy. And Sankhya is also very important because it gave the distinction between Purusha and Prakriti. It was the first one to say that very clearly. And also the concept of Sattva, Rajas, Tamas is originated in Sankhya. Okay? That's the traditional Sankhya. But when Gita is using Sankhya, it does not go into the other things, but it accepts the concept of Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. It applies that all the time. And also it accepts the Purusha and Prakriti, although its interpretation is slightly different, and we will see what that difference is later on. Yoga, traditional yoga is usually as understood, is the Raj Yoga of Patanjali. Okay? There are 8 steps very clearly, and the first step is Yama, control. Okay? Don't do this, don't do that. Okay? Don't steal, don't have greed. There are 5 yamas, okay, and then there are 5 niyamas, what you should do and what you should not do. Okay, so that is the traditional Patanjali's Raj Yoga. But when when the Gita is using the concepts of the yoga, it says that it is Karma Yoga. It is quite different. When it uses the term yoga, it is karma yoga. That means you have to do works in the world. Whereas the traditional Raj Yoga is you are not doing works in the world. You are separating yourself from the body-mind life, doing works in the world, and you are separating yourself and going up. So you can see that the terms are quite different in the traditional sense and also in Gita, the way they are applied. We'll go into more details when we come to it. Okay, so now, in the moment of his turning from his first and summary answer to Arjuna's difficulties, and in the very first words, which strike the keynote of a spiritual solution, the teacher makes at once a distinction which is of the utmost importance for the understanding of the Gita. And what is that? The distinction of Sankhya and Yoga. Sankhya goes towards knowledge and Yoga goes towards Karma Yoga, works. Okay? So they are absolutely opposite. In knowledge, you are going away from works. You are going to the silence of the self. And in Karma Yoga, you are turning all your works, you are not rejecting a single work. Whatever you are doing, you offer it to the divine. So basically, the processes are absolutely opposite to each other. One, you are going away from the world, and the other, you are remaining in the world and offering everything to the divine. So this is the what Sundar is saying, utmost importance. And Gita uses both. Okay? Gita says both are valid. That's the interesting part. Traditionally, they are opposites, but in the Gita, they are synthesized. Okay. Then there is a quotation. Such is the intelligence, the intelligent knowledge of things and will declared to thee in the Sankhya. Hear now this in the Yoga. For if thou art in yoga by this intelligence, O son of Pritha, okay, Pritha is the mother of Arjuna, so Partha becomes the name. Okay. There is Guna and Vriddhi in Sanskrit. The two terms are Guna and Vriddhi. Vriddhi is even more. So it becomes Pritha and Partha. So that's the grammatical construction, how they do it. O son of Pritha, in other words, he would have said Partha, okay? Thou shalt cast away the bondage of works. So, on the one hand, you are doing Sankhya yoga and yoga. This the bondage of works will be removed. So you can continue to do works, but there will be no bondage to you. That is the literal translation of the words in which the Gita announces the distinction it intends to make. Remember that the traditional Raj Yoga is rejecting the world, okay? It wants to go into the silence of the self. But the Gita does not do that. The Gita says we don't reject the physical world, just like in Swayambhu Yoga. You turn all your efforts towards the application of the divine nature in life. If you remember those who have read the Gita, whatever you are doing, yad karoshi, yad ashnasi, okay, yad juhoshi, whatever you are doing, do it for the Lord. Okay? That's what it says. So this is the first para. He is going to make a difference between traditional Sankhya and Sankhya as applied in Gita, and the traditional yoga and the concept of yoga in the Gita. Okay? So we'll go into that in the next few paragraphs. So we read the next one. The Gita is in its foundation.
I'm reading Rangadhar.
Yeah, please.
The Gita is in its foundation a Vedantic work. It is one of the three recognized authorities for the Vedantic teaching, and although not described as a revealed scripture, although that is to say, it is largely intellectual, ratiocinative, philosophical in its method, founded indeed on the truth, but not the directly inspired word which is the revelation of the truth to the higher faculties of the seer, it is yet so highly esteemed as to be ranked almost as a 13th Upanishad. But still, its Vedantic ideas are throughout and thoroughly colored by the ideas of the Sankhya and the Yoga way of thinking, and it derives from this coloring the peculiar synthetic character of its philosophy. It is, in fact, primarily a practical system of yoga that it teaches, and it brings in metaphysical ideas only as explanatory of its practical system. Nor does it merely declare Vedantic knowledge, but it founds knowledge and devotion upon works, even as it uplifts works to knowledge, their culmination, and informs them with devotion as the very heart and kernel of their spirit. Again, its yoga is founded upon the analytical philosophy of the Sankyas, takes that as a starting point and always keeps it as a large element of its method and doctrine. But still, it proceeds far beyond it, negatives even some of its characteristic tendencies, and finds the means of reconciling the lower analytical knowledge of Sankhya with the higher synthetic and Vedantic truth.
Okay. So we'll have a look at what he's saying. But note interestingly, the Vedantic is the highest, okay, and the highest synthetic Vedantic truth. But the Sankhya is absolutely right at the lower levels of the spiritual plane, the lower analytical knowledge. It makes a difference between Purusha and Prakriti, whereas in the Vedanta, Purusha and Prakriti are one at the highest level. Okay, they become the Ardhanarishvara. So there are a lot of differences, and all these differences are reconciled in the Gita to a large extent. Okay, so now we go to the Gita is in its foundation a Vedantic word. So we must have a very clear idea of what is meant by Vedanta. Okay. The Vedanta, actually the word Vedanta, Vedasya Anta, at the end of the Vedic period. And that also has got two meanings. One is that it came after the Vedic period in time. Okay, that is one thing. Because the Vedas were not logic, they were Shrutis. They were heard by the sages, and they were passed down orally. They were not even actually in the beginning, they were not even noted down. The noting down came later on. So that's a Vedic period. But it also is Vedanta, Vedasya Anta in this sense that it carried forward the truths given in the Vedas and made it intellectual. Okay. So Srimdo says there are three types of knowledge. He says that in the Life Divine Methods of Vedantic Knowledge, he says that the first real knowledge is beyond words. Okay, it is Shruti and Drishti. Okay, Shruti and Smriti. It is remembered truths, and they are beyond words. Then the second one is when they are put into language of philosophy. Okay, you have to use words, and it is intellectual statement, which is necessarily a little limited. So you come down in the spiritual value, it is pointing to the truths, but still it is at a lesser level. Then finally at the third level, you come down to physical facts, knowledge of the physical world, senses. So the first you are depending on Shruti and Smriti, and the second one you are using intellectual knowledge, it is mental knowledge, okay? And finally you are using sense knowledge. So these are the three types of knowledge that is there. That's what. So what is Vedanta? The Vedanta is comprises of three authorities. One is the Upanishads. Okay? And mainly the Upanishads are actually 103, 104, 105, but the 12 are the main Upanishads. I just read out the names, and then the next is the Brahma Sutras of Badarayana. The Brahma Sutras are very difficult to understand. They are sutras, aphorisms. And the Srimdo says in one place that the commentaries on the aphorisms are easier to understand than the aphorisms themselves, because they are so compact in language that you could go any direction. Okay. So, and Badarayana is nobody else but Vyasa. Okay. So he is the one who compiled these Brahma. He is the commentaries. Okay. Brahma Sutras. They are commentaries on the truths. So that's one. And the third is the Gita. The Gita is accepted as a Vedantic work. Okay. It accepts the Advaita philosophy. So there you are. So the Upanishads are, the main one is Isha, very short but very, very powerful, and Srimdo uses that. He's got a whole volume on the Isha Upanishad, because The Isha Upanishad says very clearly that the highest is also the lowest. Okay. So then you have the Kena Upanishad, the Katha Upanishad, the Mundaka Upanishad, the Mandukya Upanishad, the Prashna Upanishad. There are only 6 questions and they are dealt with. Then there is the Aitareya, Shvetashvatara, Chandogya and Brihadaranyaka, and there is also the Kaitiriya. Surendra has translated most of them, but he has not translated fully the Brihadaranyaka and the Chandogya. They are very big ones, and he has not translated those. Then there is a Kaivalya Upanishad also. There are many other Gauna Upanishads, what you call minor Upanishads, and some of them are beautiful, but they are not usually included because they are very small and short. They are considered minor Upanishads. So, this is the Vedanta. The Vedanta is the Upanishads, Advaita philosophy. Then it is, I am reading the text now. The Gita is in its foundation a Vedantic work. It is one of the 3 recognized authorities for the Vedantic teaching, and although not described as a revealed scripture, okay, what is meant by revealed scripture? The Shruti and the Smriti, okay, the one that is, it comes down direct. That's why it is said that the Vedas are not written by human beings, okay, they have been heard and just recorded without mental interference. Without mental interference. And they were recorded very interestingly. They were recorded orally down the ages until finally they were written down. So that's a revealed scripture. So Gita is not a revealed scripture because it forms part of the Mahabharata, and the Mahabharata is a written work, and the written work is of Vyasa. It's a story, and in that story he is putting it into words, the spiritual truths. So it's not revealed scripture, but it is at the second level. That's what Srindi is saying. Although that is to say, it is largely intellectual, ratiocinative, philosophical in its method. So as I told you, the second level of the knowledge. The first level is revealed scripture, Shruti and Smriti. And the second is the intellectual. Those truths only, but you are putting it into mental terms. Okay? So that's it. Gita falls in that category. So it's largely intellectual, ratiocinative, based on logic and reason and philosophical in its method. Founded indeed on the truth, but not the directly inspired word, which is a revelation of the truth through the higher faculties of the seer. So note here, interestingly, he is using the inspired word, inspiration, which is a revelation of the truth. Revelation is drishti, shruti and drishti. Srivendra says that the supramental has got mainly 4 powers. Okay? One is drishti, sight, spiritual sight. The other is the hearing, inspiration. So, revelation, inspiration, and discrimination, okay, and intuition. These are the 4 powers of the supermind. And these 4 powers, when they start coming down, they carry a little bit of that highest value, but they become slightly diminished in value because they are put into words, and as it keeps coming down, it becomes more and more manifest and becomes slightly darker and more limited. So that's what Srindi is saying here. The Gita falls in that category. Yet, Srindi is saying, it is yet so highly esteemed as to be ranked almost as a 13th Upanishad. The 12 Upanishads are usually considered major, and the 13th Upanishad is considered because of its practical guidance. The Upanishads often don't give you practical guidance, but the Gita is absolutely practical guidance. How to do it. It even tells you how to sit erect. Okay? And neither you should sit on too high a seat nor too low a seat. Because if you are sitting on too low a seat, then there can be disturbances, insects can come and others can disturb you. And when you are sitting on too high a seat, if you go into samadhi, you will fall down. So it tells you and how it should be comfortable with a grass seat or a tiger skin. It goes into such details. Okay? keep your spine and your head all in one line. Okay, all these things is very, very practical. Okay, how to do things. So it is yet so highly esteemed as to be ranked almost as a 13th person. But still, its Vedantic ideas are throughout and thoroughly colored by the ideas of Sankhya and the way, Yoga way, because the Sankhya is actually supposed to be non-theistic. It is supposed to be atheistic religion. It's not based on the Vedas, because they go purely to the impersonal aspect of the divine. Okay? And the yoga method also, they go to the impersonal aspect of the divine. They don't much bother about the theistic aspect. The theistic aspect means God in personal form. So both of them. But the Gita goes very much into the personal aspect of the divine. Okay? So that's what he's saying. But still its Vedantic ideas are throughout and thoroughly colored by the ideas of the Sankhya and the Yoga way. In other words, the Gita accepts both the impersonal aspect of the divine as well as the personal aspect of the divine. Okay, so ideas of Sankhya and the Yoga way of thinking, and it derives its coloring, this coloring, the peculiar synthetic character of its philosophy. So, in fact, he has told you earlier that the Gita is one of the syntheses. The first synthesis was the Veda, the second synthesis was the he tells you that it is the tantric, then there are other synthetic systems also, and finally you come to the Sridhar's own Gita and Sridhar's. They are all syntheses. In other words, they don't limit themselves to one aspect of the truth. It is in fact primarily a practical system of yoga. There you are. It teaches you very, very clearly what to do, and it also combines theory. It tells you that you have to do it this way, but what is the theoretical truth behind it? It is in fact primarily a practical system of yoga that it teaches, and it brings in metaphysical ideas only as explanatory of its practical system. Okay? Nor does it merely declare Vedantic knowledge, nor does it merely declare, but it founds knowledge and devotion upon works. This is what Sankhya and Yoga don't do. Okay? So they is basing itself on knowledge and devotion upon works. Action in the physical world, no giving up. Even as it uplifts works to knowledge, their culmination, and informs them with devotion as their very heart and kernel of the spirit. In other words, it is combining. It wants knowledge, but it also wants a transformation of the lower through the dedication of works to the divine. Okay? So you could say there is combining knowledge and power in the physical world, power and ananda, and it's also accepting both the impersonal aspect, which is mostly knowledge, and the personal aspect, which is love and also power to a certain extent. Yoga is founded upon the analytical philosophy of the Sankhyas. Sorry, again it's yoga. Okay? The, the yoga in the Gita is founded upon the analytical philosophy of the Sankhya. It accepts the Sankhya, takes that as a starting point, and always keeps it as a large element of its method and doctrine, but it still proceeds far beyond it. What the differences are, we'll see afterwards. Okay? Negates negatives, so they're using it as a verb, negatives even some of its characteristic tendencies, and finds a means of reconciling the lower analytical knowledge of the Sankhya's with the higher synthetic and Vedantic truth. It combines knowledge as well as power and love. Okay, that's what he's saying. So the Gita is synthetic. It does not reject Sankhya, but rejects some of the ideas. It also uses the yoga, but it does not restrict itself only to knowledge. It also uses the karma yoga. Okay, that's what he's saying. So we have, we have what, 15 minutes more. little more than 15 minutes. So we can read the next one. Very small para. We can read. So now Srimla is going to explain to us what the Sankhya and Yoga are. Yeah.
Shall I read?
Yes, please do that.
What then are the Sankya and Yoga of which the Gita speaks? They are certainly not the system which we have come down to us under these names as enunciated respectively in the Sankhya Karika of Ishvara Krishna and the Yoga Aphorism and of Patanjali. The Sankhya is not the system of Karikas, at least as that is generally understood. For the Gita nowhere for a moment admits the multiplicity of Purushas as a primal truth of being, and it affirms emphatically what the traditional Sankhya strenuously denies the one as a self and Purusha, that one again as the Lord, Ishvara or Purushottama, and Ishvara as the cause of the universe. The traditional Sankhya is to use our modern distinctions. Atheistics, the Sankhya of the Gita admits and subtly reconciles the theistic, pantheistic, and monistic views of the universe.
Yeah. We'll have to go a little into philosophy to be able to understand this, but just a little is enough. Okay? So, otherwise, you have to study the Indian philosophy in detail, but that's not necessary. So, Srendra is now saying, what is the traditional Sankhya and Yoga and how is it being used in the Gita? He is telling you very clearly. What then are the Sankhya and Yoga of which the Gita speaks? They are certainly not the systems which have come down to us under these names as enunciated respectively in the Sankhya Karika of Ishvara Krishna. So, just 1 second, there is a lot of noise outside. We just so. This Sankhya of the Ishvara Krishna is, as I told you, separation of Purusha and Prakriti, and it gives you knowledge. Okay? That's the thing. But the Gita uses the concept of Purusha and Prakriti, but unites them later on in the Advaita philosophy. That's the difference. So, in the Sankhya, this Sankhya, the Sankhya of the Gita, is not the system of the Kalikas, at least as that is generally understood. Now we are telling you what the difference is. For the Gita nowhere for a moment admits the multiplicity of Purushas as a primal truth of being, and it affirms emphatically what the traditional Sankhya strenuously denies, the one as self and Purusha, and that one again as the Lord, Ishvara or Purushottama, and Ishvara as a cause of the universe. So, we'll just briefly touch upon this. The Sankya philosophy says that the Purushas are many and Prakriti is one. There is universal nature and that is one for everybody. The world is there for everybody, it's the same. For you and for all the others and for 7.5 billion people on earth, the universe is the same. You experience it differently, that's another matter. But it is the same. So Prakriti is one, but Purushas are many. And what is the Purusha? The divine one who makes himself into the many. Your individual jiva, your individual self, your individual soul. Note interestingly that if you realize the divine, the others are not realizing the divine. Okay? So it is true at the lower level. At the lower level, definitely it is true that if one person realizes the divine, the others are not necessarily coming to know. Therefore, there is a difference. There is a difference between your soul and my soul. And this is true at the lower level. Huh? Because if you remember the principle of the one becoming the many, at the lowest level, the many is the fact. So your soul, my soul, all are essentially the same, but different in form and consciousness. So Sankhya is correct in the lower levels. That's why Sri is saying the lower analytical knowledge. And analytical, that means mental, of Sankya, and the higher synthetic and Vedantic truth. The highest, what does the Advaita say? Everything is the divine, there is only one. In other words, your soul, my soul, and everybody else's soul is essentially the same. At the highest level, they are essentially the same. We accept that essentiality. We don't accept the multiplicity. This to understand this essentiality, very easy. I can give you all the species. Okay? There is one essentiality in a species, let us say all the horses. Okay? The horseness is the essentiality. All of them are horses, and yet they are all different. One horse is different from another, color is different, power is different, height is different, form is different. Exactly in the same way you can also say about a mango tree giving mangoes. Each mango, there is a mango-ness. They all taste essentially the same, but small differences will be there in size, color, shape, and everything. So the essentiality is the common to everybody. So this, the essential in human souls is the divine. That is common. But it puts on the characteristics of the many at the lower levels. Right? The one becoming the many at the lower levels. The one and then it becomes many. So this is the difference between Advaita and the Sankhya. The Sankhya stresses the lower aspect and Advaita stresses the higher aspect. Okay. So you don't accept, okay, the many are there, but it's only an appearance. Okay, it's all one. They insist on that. But the analytical, lower analytical knowledge at the physical level, all the different, the truth is that they're all different. So each one is right at their own level. Okay? So that's why it is synthetic, that's why. Okay? So this, very clear now? So this is what he's saying here. This Sankhya is not the system of the Karika. At least that is as generally understood. For the Gita nowhere for a moment admits the multiplicity of Purushas as a primal truth of being. Note the word primal truth. It's a truth at the lower level, but the Gita does not stress it. Okay? Go higher up and see the essentiality of things. Don't get stuck at the lower level. The lower level, there is a practical truth, but it's not the essential truth. And it affirms emphatically what the traditional Sankhya strenuously denies. This Sankhya, the traditional Sankhya, says the one as self and Purusha. That one again as the Lord, Ishvara or Purushottam. This the Gita stresses that essentially at the highest level it is the Lord, Ishvara, Purushottam, who is both personal and impersonal. But the Sankhya insists that all the souls, the selves, are multiple. They are all different. They are not one. That's what it's true at the lower level, and at the higher level, it's a Advaita philosophy that is the truth. The traditional Sankhya is, to use our modern distinctions, atheistic. The atheistic means it has the, you have to understand this, it is the impersonal aspect of the divine. You get all the Buddhistic and Sankhya, these are all non-Vedic origin. They have a non-Vedic origin. Why? Because they stop at the impersonal aspect of the divine. And impersonal, what happens? You are having peace, you are having knowledge, you are having freedom, a sense of infinity, but nobody is there. It's absolutely impersonal. So that the Gita does not accept. The divine has a form, and you can have a conversation, you can have an exchange, you can love the divine. It's very difficult to love the infinite. There's nothing to love. It's only peace and calm and so. So, although it sounds funny, but it is possible to love also the infinite. At the highest level it is possible, but not at the lower levels. Okay? The traditional Sankhya is, to use our modern discussion, atheistic. That's why Even the Buddhism is called atheistic. Even the Jaina philosophy, okay, it is atheistic in this sense. So the divine is not stressed upon, but the Tirthankaras are stressed. Okay, the 24 Tirthankaras, na Shilpa, 24.
Yes, 24 in Chera.
Yeah, uh, they are the Tirthankaras. They have realized the higher levels of consciousness, impersonal aspect of the divine. So, but the Sankhya, the Gita is saying, the Sankhya of the Gita admits and subtly reconciles, not grossly, but subtly reconciles the theistic. So, which is the theistic? The personal aspect of the divine at the highest level, the pantheistic at the cosmic level, and that is the impersonal aspect of the divine, and the monistic views of the universe. Okay, the monistic view is everything is one. Okay, at the highest level. So I think I said opposite. Theistic would then come to the lowest, the individual aspect of the divine. You see the divine within yourself, and you can have bhakti, devotion, and love. Pantheistic, universal, and monistic is at the highest level, the transcendental. So this is what he is distinguishing. In other words, to make it very short, Swami is saying that the Sankhya, traditional Sankhya, is not the Sankhya of the Gita. It rejects some of its ideas, but accepts the Purusha Prakriti principle, and it also accepts the Sattva Rajas Tamas. They are the two main contributions of the Sankhya philosophy, and it accepts both. But it does not accept the atheistic aspect. It accepts also the theistic aspect. That's what Swami is. Okay. Now he has discussed the Sankhya. Now he will discuss the yoga system and how it differs in the traditional system and how it differs in the Gita. So we have some time. We have 6 minutes. So we can read it. We can read it. So who will read? Pallavi can read. Yasmin has read yesterday. Pallavi can read. Pallavi, are there?
Yes, Rangada.
Yeah. So read it. Nor is this yoga. Yeah.
Nor is this yoga the yoga system of Patanjali, for that is a purely subjective method of Raj Yoga, an integral discipline, limited, rigidly cut out, severely and scientifically graded, by which the mind is progressively stilled and taken up into samadhi, so that we may gain the temporal and eternal results of this self exceeding the temporal in a great expansion of the soul's knowledge and powers, the eternal in the divine union. But the yoga of the Gita is a large, flexible, and many sided system with various elements, which are all successfully harmonized by a sort of natural and living assimilation. And of these elements, Raj Yoga is only one and not the most important and vital. This yoga does not adopt any strict and scientific gradation, but is a process of natural soul development. It seeks by the adoption of a few principles of subjective poise and action to bring about a renovation of the soul and a sort of change, ascension, or new birth out of the lower nature into the divine. Accordingly, its idea of samadhi is quite different from the ordinary notion of the yogic trance. And while Patanjali gives to works only an initial importance for moral purification and religious concentration, the Gita goes so far as to make works the distinctive characteristic of yoga. Action to Patanjali is only a preliminary in the Gita, it is a permanent foundation. In the Raj Yoga, it has practically to be put aside when its results has been attained, or at any rate ceases very soon to be a means for the yoga. For the Gita, it is a means of the highest ascent and continues even after the complete liberation of the soul.
So there's two differences. The traditional yoga system of Patanjali, which is normally also used, the word Raja Yoga is used, and that is the most widely practiced in India. Okay, the Raj Yoga. And it's a very, very systematic, and if you follow correctly and sincerely, you will absolutely get the result. Any number of yogis reach by using the Raj Yoga method. And what is the Raj Yoga method? There are 8 steps, very, very clear 8 steps. And what are those steps? First is the so I'll briefly touch upon what the yamas and the niyamas are, and then we will go on to the next. So first is yama. Yama means code. Okay. So, Pallu, that was your phone ringing? Okay, so whatever. So the yamas. Yama is control. Yam is the root. So what do? First is ahimsa, non-violence. Non-violence in action, in emotion, as well as in thought. You must not have any violence towards others, even in thought. That's wrong. Then the second one is asteya. Asteya means non-stealing. So neither you should have any violence to others, nor you should have any attitude of stealing. Then the third is speaking the truth. Sankya vachanam. Okay. Then sexual purity, brahmacharya. And finally, contentment, shanti. Or it is also sometimes used as agrahyam, desire. Actually, they are not different. Contentment means whatever comes to you automatically, you are content with that. And agrahyam means you are not, graha is to seize. So you are not going out of your way to seize things which you desire. So that's it. 5 yamas. Then there are the niyamas which you should follow. These are things which you should not do. You should not have violence. You should not steal. You should not tell the lies. You should not be sexually impure, nor should you have desires. They are the yamas. Then the niyamas are what you should do. Shauchyam. You must have, in the tropics, definitely you must have 2 baths a day. Then there is swadhyaya, study of scriptures. Then there is tapasya. Tapasya can be interpreted in many ways. Concentration, okay, and intensification of your attention. Okay, that's one. Then Ishvara Pranidhana, worship of the divine. And finally, contentment. Make your being as calm as possible. So these are the first is yamas, next is niyamas, then now after this moral training of yama and niyama, you start dealing with the physical, vital and mental. So first you deal with the physical asanas. The third step is asanas. Okay? And there are many asanas and you can use them, but each one makes the body subtle and it purifies the body also, and you can have a long life and a very healthy life. The asanas. There are many, but we used to have a Ambuda was the one who used to give always a demonstration on the 2nd of December, asanas. He was an expert at it, and he would give all the different poses, and there are names for each asana. So the asanas is the next is the purification of the vital through pranayama, breathing. That also there are many types of breathings, but you can reduce them to a minimum of regular breathing. Breathing in, breathing out. It's a whole science. There is a breathing out, there is a breathing in, and there is a holding of the breath. Rechaka, Puraka, and Kumbhaka. So these are the 3 things which are insisted, and each one has got a value. Okay? So that's the 4th one, the pranayama. Then there is the pratyahara. Pratyahara. Don't feed your senses. Better to starve them. That means, in other words, don't detach yourself from the senses. Let the senses work, but don't get attached to the results of the senses. Don't get attracted to things, nor get repulsed by them. So then you come to the mind, and the mind has got 3 stages: dharana, dhyana, samadhi. So this is the yoga system of Patanjali, which is also called the Raj Yoga. But it is very, very scientific, and it normally takes you away from the physical world. Okay? So it takes you normally away from the physical. But the Gita doesn't want you to take away from the physical world. So this is what we read just now. I gave you the kernel, but we will redo this next time. Okay? Because there are three things which you need to see what he said. Okay? So nor is this yoga, the Gita yoga, the yoga system of Patanjali. It's not. It uses some concept but not everything. Okay? So we stop here today. Au revoir, everybody. Sukhi, note down. Read. Au revoir, everybody. Au revoir. Au revoir. Have a nice day.